Hi, I'm Miles Himmerich. I am now in my late 30s, and over the last few years, I've learned more and more about this disability that I live with. You see, I live with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I've known that I've lived with this disability my entire life. I know that I will continue to live with this disability for the rest of my life, as it's something that is with me and always will be. People quite often ask me, when did you get your diagnosis? You see, when I was adopted around the age of 3, my adopted parents were told that I had at the time FAE, fetal alcohol effects, now changed to fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. So I knew I had this diagnosis as a small child. But for so long, it was simply just letters. It didn't matter what those letters were, it was just letters. It didn't make sense to me. All I knew is that I couldn't read or I couldn't write like the other kids, that I couldn't remember things, that I wasn't very good at math. I knew that I had a learning disability, but I wasn't able to connect it all and make sense of it. It wasn't until I was in my mid to late 20s that when I started going to conferences about FASD and listening to people speak about it, listening to people explain it, that's when things started making sense. That's when I was able to go, oh my goodness, okay, so I'm not lazy. My body gets tired and I need more rest than other people. I'm not stupid. I have problems with memory. I have to do things differently. When I started understanding FASD, it changed everything. You see, for me, when I think about when I got my diagnosis, for me, it's when I started going to these conferences and learning more about FASD. When you try to understand yourself and you try to find your place in life, it can be very difficult for anybody, whether you have a disability or not. We're all just trying to find our way in life and trying to find a purpose. In finding that purpose, we have to fully understand ourselves. You see, I think it's very important for an individual with FASD to, first off, get the diagnosis so they know where their struggles are and where their strengths are, so that they can bring in the supports that they need to be successful, and so that they can focus on those strengths to be even more successful. It's also important to have the understanding of the diagnosis, because this is something I'm going to live with my whole life, so I need to know how to deal with it. I need to know how to understand it. I need to understand that this is what I live with. I have FASD. It doesn't define who I am. This is simply the disability that I live with. But by understanding the diagnosis, I better understand myself. For so long, I came up with names and labels of who I was. You know, I was silly, I was lazy, I was dumb. But once I got the diagnosis and became aware of what it was, I could become accepting of this. Because it's not this big, bad doom and gloom thing. It just means I learned differently. By coming to a point where I could become accepting of it, I became accepting of myself. I became aware of it. I became aware of myself. That's why it's important to get the diagnosis, to better understand the diagnosis, to better understand yourself.